Hello there, and welcome to episode 3 of Star Wars Beyond the Real, a Star Wars podcast. I am Chase Kaler, your host, and with me as always is my good friend Preston Coburn. Preston, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to have you on co-hosting, and we're going to just get right into it again.
Yeah.
Episode 3, we've got this. First off, we're just going to do a little bit of a catch-up on how our lives are from the last time our listener, we have one listener actually confirmed.
Do we?
Yeah, we have one.
Wow. We're moving on up.
Yeah. Do a little catch-in from the last time they heard from us. Any new exciting things happening in your life? Any news?
Nope.
Star Wars related or otherwise?
Nope.
Did you get a chance to play any Battlefront?
Oh, no, I didn't. I've been playing Tomb Raider.
Oh, okay.
I've been catching up on those 3 games.
There's 3 of them?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I don't know anything about Tomb Raider.
It's pretty good.
Are they like the old, like, PS ones?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, the new ones.
The new ones. Like the one they made that recent movie about?
Oh, I don't know about the recent movie.
The movie was pretty good.
Okay.
I'm more of a movie guy than a gamer guy, so... So no Battlefront for you. I actually didn't really get a chance to play any Battlefront either, just for that new update for like an hour and a half, and that was it. So
I'd be more inclined if there was a story update. I know that's never going to happen, but
yeah.
I would jump into it for that. For new playable characters and stuff.
They did a DLC story update when The Last Jedi came out. Did you play that one?
Oh yes, they did. Yeah, I did play that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, you're right. They're probably not going to do another one.
Yeah.
Did you play Jedi Fallen Order? This is a tangent we're going to go off again because we always do.
No, I have not, but I need to. I was thinking, oh, I'll wait till it goes on sale, but it did so well. I really don't think it's ever going to go on sale.
Yeah, probably not. That was actually a pretty fun game. I wasn't all that into it as much as I was into Battlefront, just because I'm really bad at like
puzzles.
That's what it is. It's the puzzle gaming.
You held your hand up in a puzzle motion.
Yeah.
And I knew what you were talking
Give it away.
about.
Yeah, the puzzles, or like I call them like parkour games, where it's like almost like a platform game where you have to like jump and swing and grab and shuffle and do all these things.
That's why you haven't played Tomb Raider.
That's why I haven't played it.
And that's why I should play Fallen Order.
Play Fallen Order because it's actually a lot like Tomb Raider from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Or what's the other one? It's like the Nathan Drake video game that
Uncharted. I've never played that.
I've heard it's a lot like Uncharted, which I've never played. So
the reason I'm playing Tomb Raider and not Fallen Order is because I play on Stadia, and I'm probably gonna get some hate from people. Just love to hate on Stadia right now.
What's Stadia? I actually don't know what that is.
So I travel a lot for work, and so I don't get to play my video games when I'm traveling. But Stadia came out, and it's a game streaming service. So I can be in my hotel room wherever I am. I just have to bring my controller with me, and I can play on my phone.
Oh, a guy at my work has that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Where he can, he just sets up his phone, connects it to his controller, and plays it like it's a
I have
PSP
a little mount
or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's cool. Is it, and you can do like any online stuff, or is it just like single player?
No, online. Destiny 2 is like the big online one. It works pretty well. You have to have a decent connection.
Yeah. Yeah, that's our problem here is I have like no connection here in my basement apartment. Okay, the other thing I wanted to just catch up with you on is, did you see the latest episode or any of the episodes of Clone Wars?
I did.
Oh, nice.
I
All
did,
caught up
finally.
to season 3 or episode 3, I mean.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, we will discuss that at the end of the episode, and we will dive in because
I'm finally pulling my weight.
Yeah, it was some good stuff. Let's go ahead and go into the news then, or you know what, we can roll our little intro song too. I didn't really
punch it.
Shall we punch it? Punch it!
Punch it!
Punch it! Punch it!
Rolling into the news, there's actually not a ton of news this week. Even like the Star Wars show, like the Lucasfilm produced news show that they do, was pretty bare bones. But we're gonna go over a couple of things. One of the stories coming out is that Gina Carano, has wrapped for season 2 of the Mando.
Now, does that mean that everyone's wrapped, or just her part?
Just her part, from what I gathered. Yeah, so I would guess they're wrapping up production soon though, because it's supposed to come out this fall. So they would need some time for some post. But she is all wrapped, which, I mean, we knew she was coming back, but it just kind of makes me curious how involved she is going to be in the second season. So,
Right.
I personally really liked her character. How did you feel about Cara Dune in the first season?
I thought she was awesome. She was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
To go to my tabletop game that I play, I created a Cara Dune type character kind of by accident.
Oh, really?
But she's like an Imperial person who's left the Empire and is now like on the run doing like bounty stuff.
Opposite side. So was she like a trooper? Like
She was an officer.
an officer. Okay.
But she likes to tinker with stuff, and so she has like cool armor.
Yeah.
Like, I think Cara Dune's armor is pretty cool.
I do too. I am kicking myself. I never got the Black Series 6-inch figure of her, and I need to do that if there's still one somewhere on the market.
Right.
Because I think her costume design is awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to see what she does this coming season. The last time we saw her, she said she was staying back on Navarro, I believe, with Grief Karga.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna
Like
play
she's
her
gonna
hand as a
become
bounty hunter. Yeah.
be a
So,
bounty hunter.
interested to see where that takes her and how she passes again with the Mandalorian, or Din Djarin, as we now know his
Right.
name. So
And we've seen his face.
and we've seen his face. Din Djarin, for some reason, is harder for me to say than the Mandalorian.
That makes
I
sense.
still refer to him as just Mando. So,
All Star Wars names they have to be hard to say, or they're not a Star Wars name.
well, I mean, Max Rebo. Come on, that
Okay.
just flows off the tongue with
Or-
such ease.
Or oh gosh, I'm looking at him. What's his name? The monkey.
Which Salacious B. Crumb?
Yes.
Yeah, the Kowakian monkey lizard. Yeah. Or Babu Frick is another.
Yeah.
They're just they work, but there are some of them that have like so many like vowels in a row, you know, or like Kashyyyk has 3 Y's. Like
At
you
least
were
that
to
one's
read
easy
it.
to say.
Yeah, that one's easy to say once everyone kind of figured it out. But like, there's some names that you try to read and you're like, what is that?
Well, just like Twi'lek. I hear Twi'lek and Twi'lek.
Twi'lek, AT-AT, AT-AT. There's so many different fights for pronunciations. Yeah, I remember when Harry Potter first came out in the books, and people were like, it's Hermione, it's Hermione or Hermione. It's like.
So the first book was read to me. I don't know what grade I was in, but it was read to me in school.
Yeah.
I guess the teacher just ran out of things to talk about, so she read us
Just
like
read
an
you guys
entire
Harry Potter.
book.
That's awesome.
And I'm pretty sure that she read it like Hermione or something like that. And at the time, I didn't question it, and then I either saw the movies or listened to an audiobook, and I was like, wait a second, that's not even close.
Yeah. I saw the movies before even reading the book, so I knew right away. But I'd heard stories like my sisters. They would call her Hermy-One. Hermy-One? That's like Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Okay, next little bit of news. I don't really know if it's news, but it's kind of a discussion people are having right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you heard about this? About the scene taken out of this arc in the Clone Wars?
I heard about it from you, and then I Googled it, and
Okay.
now I'm a little bit more informed.
A little more informed. So, and I'm not even the expert on it because I spent very little time looking into it, but I heard other people discuss it. What it is there was a scene in this arc of the Clone Wars that was in the animatics, I believe.
Like 2015, they figured like the Clone Wars isn't going anywhere, so let's just release a little bit of what we had left over.
Right, and they released it at was it Comic-Con or Celebration? I can't
Something
remember.
like that.
I think and they showed it, and then they put it on the internet, and people watched it. And then now they're going back, obviously, and finishing those episodes, but they have removed a scene from it where there was a piece of like nose art on a ship that was a pin-up version of Padme.
Yep.
And I think this is something that really irritated Anakin, and there was some conflict there, which makes sense. And I think the more things you can put into Star Wars to piss off Anakin Skywalker, the better, because it just makes so much more sense for his turn to the dark side. But what do you think about this whole situation of them removing it? Do you think that was warranted, or do you think it's too much tinkering? Which is going to be our main topic today, is tinkering in Star Wars, so we'll kind of look into this a little bit more in our main topic.
I don't see this one as tinkering. This is like a pre-production piece.
Yeah.
And some people are like, oh, the SJWs are ruining our Star Wars. They took out this really great scene.
Sure.
I watched the animatic. It's like, it doesn't involve the story.
Yeah.
It doesn't put characters, like push them forward. It really doesn't do anything. So I was like, yeah, I can see why it was cut for other reasons. It doesn't have to be the SJWs ruining everything.
Sure.
So I don't understand the anger. we have it. It's out there. So does it have to be in like the official show?
That is a great phrase, or just a good thing to remember when thinking about Star Wars. Is I don't understand the anger like that. That defines it right there, because there is so much anger out there. It's
Well, hopefully there is a lot of anger out there, but it's from a few people.
yeah. No,
It's
that's
just
true.
from those loud people.
And they are the loudest. Yeah, the angriest are the loudest. And that even goes into our next story here, which we'll talk about. Again, the angriest are the loudest. But yeah, I would agree with you. This scene, if it's not necessary, who cares?
Yeah.
Maybe it was fun, and maybe it was a good look into Anakin or whatever. But yeah, if the creators felt like it wasn't necessary, well, you wouldn't even known about it if it wasn't for those animatics earlier, so people wouldn't be discussing it. I mean, there's so much stuff that gets left on the cutting room floor. You can't put everything in.
Right.
So, well, the next one is kind of the biggest news, which goes into our main topic again of tinkering in Star Wars, and that is the reveal that not only is this is spoilers for anybody who is going to read the novelization of of Rise of Skywalker, and doesn't want any details spoiled. You might want to skip over, actually, a lot of this episode, because we're going to be talking about it a lot in our main topic. But so last week we kind of discussed how they revealed in some of the pages that were released online from an early release of the novelization at C2E2 in Chicago. And people were posting it online, and we found out that Palpatine was indeed a clone. So it wasn't the original Palpatine that we saw in the movie. This week, we also revealed, or we didn't reveal, someone revealed to the fans that Palpatine's son was not his actual son. It was a clone, a failed clone of Palpatine that ended up not being Force sensitive, therefore being completely useless to Palpatine until he realized that he had birthed, or not himself birthed, but he had fathered a...
Oh, I see what you're saying.
He'd fathered Rey, a very Force-sensitive child. This is just more of the same.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I sent you that GIF when we were talking about it earlier. I sent you that Nemoidian. Now there are two of them.
There's two Palpatine clones out there. And
they
what?
Just keep doing it.
Her parents died, didn't they?
Yes, I believe they were murdered by the Jedi Hunter with the dagger. That dagger that we love so much. That has so much to do with the rest of the trilogy.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't even know what to talk about with this one.
Well, it's interesting that, they're on Exegol, they're cloning up Palps, and then they're like, oh, this one's perfectly formed, finally, but then he doesn't have any Force abilities, so they're like, whatever, just, throw him out the back, and then, he just ran away and got married.
Oh, we'll let him go off to Jakku and live his own life. He's still Palpatine, right? You would think that he would get into some trouble, although he doesn't. He becomes a good person, which is odd. So that's kind of a theme in Star Wars.
Well, how good of a person was he? He dumped his daughter on a planet.
That's true.
With that chubby guy.
But he did it to save her, according to the movie, which we saw for about a snippet of a second.
Yep.
But yeah, they make him out to be almost kind of a hero in the film, right? Or to an extent, he loved him, and so they had to hide.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
But okay. So I guess there's kind of a theme in Star Wars already, where you don't have to be what you're programmed to be, and I like that. We see an episode of Clone Wars where this happens, where a clone deserts the Republic Army and starts his own little family.
That's right. I really like that episode.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. And it's true that the clones don't have to be, like Jango Fett. And part of it is because they have inhibitor chips, which keep them more docile. But it was just interesting to me to see that, Palpatine's clone of himself ended up being completely different than the original Palpatine. And it could be the fact that he wasn't Force sensitive. Yeah. He didn't have power, and so power didn't corrupt him. So there's actually some cool storytelling lined in there.
We need a standalone.
Yeah.
We need a Palpatine clone standalone movie.
Palpatine standalone film. But the fact that it wasn't in the movie, again, it's just like, to me, it doesn't really affect the canon of it.
Well, you brought up Harry Potter, and I
Yeah.
think Harry Potter has gone through this same thing that Star Wars is going through right now, where J.K. Rowling just through Twitter started saying like, "Hey, did you know this? Hey, did you know that
Right.
about this universe that I created?" And everyone's like, at first, I think people were kind of like, "Oh, interesting," and after a while, we're like, "Stop adding stuff to this books. If it's
Yeah.
not in the books, it doesn't matter." So, but here we're talking about stuff that's in the book that's not in the movies. So it's like, I think the big question is, why is all of this stuff having to be revealed through books?
Right.
And that's the same question I had after episode 7. Like, we learned a lot as Star Wars fans by reading the website, reading comics.
Sure.
But why wasn't that in the film?
And that is part of Star Wars for sure. Not so much like in the original trilogy, because in the original trilogy, if you just watch those 3 movies, that's a complete story, and
Yep.
you know what happened. Now you can read comics and books and stuff of things that happened between the movies, and it adds to it, but none of it's necessary.
Right.
It's almost just like a bunch of deleted scenes you can read.
Mm-hmm.
Where this stuff seems to be important.
Yeah.
And it's creating a lot of debate.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have an easy time ignoring it because it's like, well, if it wasn't in the film, it must not have been all that important.
Mm-hmm.
But they are kind of major plot points. We saw this as well with The Last Jedi, where you get more insight into like what Luke might have been thinking on Nocto, and like the fact that one of the cool ones was that he was going to speak to Rey and tell her that he was going to join in the fight before he saw her with Kylo, and then he freaked out and blew up the hut and whatever. So I thought that was cool because it's more of like let's go into the heads of these characters a little bit, because we can in a novel, which we can't in a film.
Right.
But this stuff is like, oh, we didn't have time to fit this into the movie, so let's put it in the book and hope people read it. And and if people don't read it, then they're gonna tweet it, and then we're gonna get this canon out there, and it's not having the effect that I think they want it to have. I think it's the opposite, where it's creating arguments and creating people to just dislike this film even more, for those who dislike it, and for the people who like it, they might like it even more. Whatever your opinion, this might strengthen it or weaken it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, but overall, I feel like it's kind of like a zero-sum game. We don't really get anything out of all these.
Yeah.
It's not enhancing anything, in my opinion.
No, I agree. One thing that I thought was interesting about this reveal is that this really doesn't make Rey Palpatine's granddaughter,
Oh, that's right.
which they said in the movie, didn't they?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they said Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter. Wouldn't this make Rey Palpatine's daughter, or a clone of Palpatine's daughter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was their initial justification of why she was his granddaughter?
Well, okay, so what they in the film, and again, I don't think the screenwriter or JJ is correlating with these novel writers, right? I think they're
Right.
just kind of both given reins and, are going to make the story more intriguing on where they would like to.
Yeah, fair enough.
But we all came out of, at least I did, came out of The Rise of Skywalker thinking, okay, Palpatine got down and dirty and had a kid, right?
Right. That's what I was thinking too.
Right. And so we're like, okay, well, what's that story there?
Yep.
And then now I think Lucasfilm was like, well, that's kind of weird. I don't know if we want to write a story there. Let's just call him a, failed clone, which, I mean, makes a little bit more sense with Palpatine than having a son or having...
I guess my initial assumption was that he didn't have a kid while he was emperor. He had a kid while he was a senator.
Yeah.
That was my assumption.
But I feel like that would make... he could have, yeah. And he just hid it somewhere, or...
Well, they wouldn't have to hide. They just never are brought up. They were
Yeah.
like the kid that disappointed his father. He didn't go into politics. He just wanted to be a spice trader.
Well, I was just curious,
I don't know.
because I always thought in my head canon, like, that maybe he did have this kid before he was emperor, before he was all disfigured, so...
Yeah.
Because I'm sure he had a harder time with the ladies after the lightning burns. But he probably had this kid when he was a senator, or even the chancellor, and then maybe paid to keep it quiet or something, and then the kid didn't know, right? Because I feel like if you knew your dad was the emperor of the galaxy, you'd probably say something, or you'd probably reach out to him. Because I always thought of the emperor as maybe not seen as evil by everyone in the galaxy who didn't know what he did. Like, propaganda would make him out to seem like a good person, like a benevolent emperor.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's canon.
Right. And they do that a little bit like in Rebels and stuff.
In Rebels and in
some of the books.
The Lost Stars.
Lost Stars. Oh, that's right. Yeah, they view him as this savior of the galaxy.
And they use old photos or old images of him before he was disfigured.
Right. And so you would think that this kid, if he knew who his dad was, he would have, reached out and been like, oh, my dad's this greatest person ever.
Right.
I'm going to try to contact him and, get a piece of that pie. But,
get my own Star Destroyer.
Yeah, which probably would have resulted in Palpatine just killing him. Like, I feel like that's how Palpatine would deal with his problems, not hiding him away. So it does make more sense for him to be a clone, but
yeah,
again,
it feels a little shoehorned. Like, okay, it was decided between maybe episode 8 and 9. We want Rey to be his granddaughter. How's that going to happen? And then we kind of figure out things backwards,
right?
Which can be useful in storytelling, but this one just feels a little bit forced.
I agree. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff in The Rise of Skywalker is shoehorned, which this episode is not about that. We're not going to go on another tangent. All right,
we can go to our main topic.
Yeah, let's get into the main topic because it actually, transitions perfectly because our main topic today is tinkering with Star Wars. And I think this isn't first on the list, but I think this is what I want to talk about first. As our initial jumping in part would be the special editions. Because that's the first time we really saw Lucasfilm or George Lucas himself really just start tinkering with something that was already out and saying, oh, I'm going to change this a little bit. How do you feel, let's just say in general, how do you feel about tinkering with Star Wars?
I should have looked at this beforehand, but I've heard a story of an artist, like a painter, that they would have to search him before he went into his art gallery. So
really?
His art is up there for sale on a wall, and they'd search him for paints and paintbrushes because he couldn't stop touching his paints. Yeah,
that's funny.
He just kept picking at it, and it was never quite perfect. So I think it's justifiable for someone to always want to improve their craft. Most artists, I feel, move on and say, I'll take the lessons learned and do it better next time.
Right.
But that's not always the case, especially with something as big and prominent. So his impulse to continually change the movies, especially the original trilogy, I understand it. And I do think that there are some good changes that he made.
I agree. I think some of the special edition changes were actually okay. Things like Jedi Rocks, not so much.
Jedi Rocks?
That's the music video they put in
right.
Return of the Jedi.
Yes.
Yeah, out of nowhere. And
I had forgotten about that.
Stepped on the toes of my boy Max Rebo. Exactly. So, as you should forget about it. It's something that you need to block from your memory.
the one that stands out is the really good one is, first, I think dewbacks are cool. I don't mind them being added. The one that I really liked was Han and Chewie when they're chasing some stormtroopers.
Yeah.
And then they turn a corner and there's a room full of it's like a whole hangar bay full of stormtroopers.
Or before it was 5 or 6.
There's 5. Yeah. And so I think that's a really cool change. And I didn't even realize that was changed until I watched videos of what was changed. The biggest bad one for me is Jabba the Hutt.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're talking about in the fourth one when they bring in Jabba into that scene. When he's going back to the Millennium Falcon, and they have the exact same conversation that he had with Greedo over.
Yep.
Not only was it bad to put it in for CGI reasons, but story beats. You have 2 identical scenes with 2 identical characters playing back to back. It makes zero sense to me.
Real quick, let's talk about the bad CGI.
Okay.
Because what year was the special edition?
There were several of them. So the first one was in 97.
That's what I thought.
Then they did one in 06, I think, and then one in 11, And I mean, they just keep going. Like McClunky. We can talk about McClunky in a little bit, but
which the Star Wars show has totally embraced.
oh, I personally think it's hilarious
It's
because
super
they've
funny.
been messed with so much. Like, I'm not mad anymore. I'm just like, McClunky. Okay, let's keep going. What else are we gonna do to change this?
But the fact that that Han Solo slides up and down as he steps over
His
Jabba's
tail?
tail,
Yeah.
and Jabba like woo,
Because
like
that's a
cartoony.
joke we needed, right? Is it-
So the CGI is bad. Then you're right. I think the story beat was unnecessary, but it's not just redundant. It ruins the reveal of Jabba the Hutt later.
Oh, for sure.
Because this is the guy that you're running from, the guy that you can just willy nilly walk on his tail.
Yeah,
And then you cut
makes
to
him less menacing. And,
you cut to the next episode, and well, who cares about this guy?
And it also kind of, in my opinion, ruins Boba Fett in a sense. Because they add Boba Fett into that scene.
Is he?
He walks into frame and then like looks at the camera briefly, and almost is just like, "Hey guys, you
I'm
remember
Boba Fett."
me? I'm Boba Fett. You saw me in the other movies that are taking place in the future of this." But it was, I don't know. It's odd to me because it almost implies that Boba Fett just hangs out with Jabba all the time, and he's just like one of his crew. But I always pictured him as just like a bounty hunter, and then like when Vader made a call out to the bounty hunter saying we need somebody to catch this ship, he shows up and then he goes, "Hey, there's also a bounty for this guy for Jabba. I'm gonna double dip on this job, and I'm gonna get the money for finding the ship and getting Luke Skywalker for Vader, but then I'm gonna take Han to Jabba and get the money for his bounty." And just he's just a smart bounty hunter that way.
Yeah, like you have that whole cool lineup of Bosk and IG-88 and Boba Fett and the fly-headed guy.
Forlom and Zuckuss.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And yeah, it just, my perception was that Boba Fett was the smartest of all of them. He's the one that caught him, because that's the first time you see him is in that
That's
lineup.
the first time that you see any bounty
And
hunters.
Vader calls out to him and says, "No disintegrations this time." And so, yeah, it just seemed like he was the cool guy, but he ends up being, that kind of turns him into like a Jabba flunky. What are they called? Crony or whatever they're called.
yeah.
Like, he's just like a Jabba bodyguard almost.
Yeah, exactly. So, but anyways, get back on topic with the tinkering. That's something I've kind of come to grips with the special editions, but now it's almost become a Star Wars tradition, right?
Right.
Where we didn't get much of it in the prequels, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
There was no prequel special edition or anything. Yet. And I think that really comes down to George Lucas truly made the films he wanted to make in the prequels.
Yeah.
Good or bad, he made what he was planning on making.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think George Lucas necessarily, because he didn't have as much free reign, made the films he wanted to make in the originals, even though, according to most Star Wars fans, they are the best films, in most people's opinion. And I think, because, have you ever seen that video, or a lot of people have talked about how Star Wars was saved in the edit?
Yeah.
Where the original script and the original, what was shot, was so convoluted and so unorganized that once it came down to the edit bay, it became a fantastic movie.
Right.
So George Lucas is excuse me. George Lucas is very capable of creating incredible story and creating incredible scenes, characters, and sequences, but he maybe just doesn't have the skill to pack them into a good formula for a film.
Right.
I mean, a good example of that is the fact that we get the Greedo scene, and then later on we get the Jabba scene, where there are even matching lines of dialogue saying the same thing. Like, what would be the point of that?
Well, and going back to what you said about so much is left on the editing room floor, that's one of those things that did get cut, and it should have stayed cut.
Right, it should remain cut. I like watching deleted scenes, like for kicks and giggles, just to see oh, what were they planning on doing?
Yep.
But never once have I seen one and been like, that should have stayed in the movie.
Right.
The only time I ever felt something close to that was with The Last Jedi, when you see Luke have a very emotional moment about finding out about the death of Han. There's a scene in there where he kind of takes a moment, and it is very good scene, and it's incredible acting from Mark Hamill. But I could see how it would kind of throw off the pacing of the film. So I trust Rian Johnson's approach as a director, and I think he was correct for cutting it out. But yeah, so the things that we kind of have on this list as far as tinkering with Star Wars goes, that we kind of wanted to touch on, is so that scene removed from Clone Wars. We kind of talked about that. So that's that, and the fact that we got more information revealed about the Rise of Skywalker are kind of what gave me the idea to talk about this as our main topic for today. We discussed a little bit already about the Padme nose art thing. Yeah. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on that, or did you kind of say everything you need to on that?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. So what about with the Rise of Skywalker? So we're getting a lot more information coming in about Palpatine and a little bit more about the heritage, and we're also getting more information coming in about Kylo Ren and Rey's relationship. So one thing that's been kind of controversial with people, and especially with a group of fans that a lot of people refer to as Reylos, which are shippers who think that Rey and Kylo should be together, is that Disney...
Which they are.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is Disney, or not Disney, but Lucasfilm has come out and said that kiss in the film was not intended to be romantic.
What?
Yes.
I'm not a Reylo, but... What?
Exactly.
Again, like, if it's not in the film, it doesn't matter, and it seemed romantic in the film, so why would you want to back?
It's odd for me that they're going to come out and say that it's not romantic, and maybe this is out of context. This is what I've heard, and this is what I've seen. So I haven't gone through and seen where Lucasfilm has said this, but a lot of people are discussing the fact that they have mentioned that it was not designed to be a romantic kiss. Which how is there any other way to kiss somebody on the lips?
Well, you can do it to make someone else jealous.
That's
if
right.
They happen
to
to
your
be
brother or
nearby.
sister.
But no one else was nearby, so
no one was nearby. Maybe it was those thousands of Sith acolytes that just disappeared. Like, what happened to them? Like, Palpatine dies, she grabs him, and they heal each other back and forth and kiss. Are they all still standing in the stadium, like chanting? Like, where did they go?
They just start like a slow Reylo,
yeah.
Reylo, Reylo.
Well, that's why the first time I saw the film, I thought they were spirits.
Oh.
I thought they were like the spirits of all the Sith. But then it came out that they were actual acolytes, and they were people who built the Star Destroyers and were doing the cloning and doing all this. But
yeah, which implies there's like cities and towns and farms and
they have to get their food somewhere, right?
Schools. Sith schools.
This is nitpicking. So I'm not saying this is a fault of The Rise of Skywalker, because you can nitpick any film and any scene away into the logic, but the fact that they're gonna claim that this was not a romantic kiss,
well, we'll have to fact check that one.
Yeah, we will definitely have to fact check that one. That was just kind of rumblings that I'd heard. But
one of the things that I've been thinking as we discuss tinkering with Star Wars, I think the biggest problem that people have with the sequels is that they tinker with Star Wars.
Right.
Whereas the prequels didn't really mess with the original trilogy, other than like Vader used to be a kid. It was a big, I don't know if that was like a thing that people were upset about. But like,
do they think Vader was never a kid?
Exactly. Well, that's kind of like the biggest subversion of expectations in the prequel trilogy. But this one, people are having problem, and I have some problems with it because it goes back on a lot of the things that were already established. I'm totally fine with a lot of the things that some other people have problems with, like the dyad and the Force.
Sure.
I think you can always add, but at a certain
Star Wars
point,
is supposed to be added onto and built upon. Yeah.
But some of these things start tinkering with things that we already understood. We talked about how fast you can travel last time, and just changes that these made to our understanding of how things work.
I will have to combat you a little bit on your statement saying that the prequels didn't, though, because I think the prequels did tinker quite a bit with the original, what we established as canon in the original trilogy. One is midichlorians.
Yes.
Now, they didn't go back and retcon anything. They just explained something that we all, as a fandom, just knew as this mystical, magical force. and then they changed it and said, well, no, it's scientific and it's in your blood.
Yeah.
And then I would say the same thing with just some of the continuity errors. For example, Leia remembering her mother, even though her mother died in childbirth, and she told that to Luke on Endor. He said, "What do you remember of your mother?" And she said, she was kind, she was beautiful, just pictures really. And he says, "I remember nothing about my mother." And so I feel like maybe the original story before he had her die in childbirth was that I keep calling her Rey, that Leia had grown
How
up,
dare you.
with Padme a little bit, in her infancy until she was eventually killed.
Well, what happened to her? So her adoptive father, was he just a single guy raising her, or was there a mother?
No, and that's the other thing. I think that's might have been how they explained it away a little bit. So Bail Organa had a wife for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that Leia grew up with her a little longer than
just having pictures
and having a couple memories, because Luke even says, "What do you remember of your mother?" And then he goes, "Your real mother."
Oh, that's right. Well, I would argue that in Bloodline, it's kind of revealed that Leia's force powers are mostly focused on people.
Sure.
Like, she has like some precognition, but also she's just really good at reading people and their emotional state.
Yeah. So
So maybe as a baby, she more so than Luke was able to kind of like make a connection with her mother
in the
even
womb.
in the womb. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of being serious with it.
No, that makes sense.
As far as like the force goes, that totally seems like something that could leave an impression on like a force sensitive Leia, because her focus is people.
Yeah.
And that's why she was a good senator.
And I believe that can be explained away. I mean, there's a lot of things in Star Wars that can be explained away.
Yeah.
And I think what is just sad to me, and I don't really give into the whole fight of prequels versus sequels thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we did discuss it on our show. I asked a poll on Twitter because I was curious, but I personally don't choose one over the other.
Right.
What I think is interesting is people will explain away things in the prequels because they're a little older now, but they refuse to explain away similar things in the sequels.
Still fresh.
Yeah, but I do believe that the sequels do have a lot more tinkering in them than what they did with the prequels. And the biggest thing, and we discussed this a little bit in previous episodes, as far as tinkering goes, is that checklist that we kind of discussed about, or discussed earlier, where the producers, or Bob Iger or Kathleen Kennedy, whoever, we don't really know the story, and I would love to learn it someday, seem to have looked at The Last Jedi, looked at the fan response, and decided, okay, we're going to tinker, and we're going to try to move it in a way that's going to please everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, I don't know if they really pleased that many people.
Mm-hmm. There are people that love it.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely true. There are people who think that it's like their top film, and that's great. However, I feel like this film is very different from The Last Jedi. Like, the divide is not much as it was. There are a lot of people who dislike The Rise of Skywalker very much, and a lot of people who really like it. But I think the majority of the fandom is looking at it going, "Oh, okay, yeah, I guess that's how that's how that ended."
That's kind of my feeling, was just a little bit of, okay.
Yeah.
I still like the parts that I like of the whole Star Wars universe, and okay.
Yeah. Right. Don't let something, new detract from something you've already loved so much. Like, you can choose to ignore it if you want to.
Which, again, my tabletop game, we don't talk about midichlorians.
Yeah.
That's something that we chose to ignore in that setting.
Right, because guess what? None of this is real. This is all fictional setting, and you can take it in as much as you want or as little as you want, and you can pick and choose what you like and what you don't.
Well, that's why I think that especially George Lucas feels the need to tinker, because he created it, and when it comes out of your head, like I said, I've written some short stories. Maybe I'll share some on here later, but they're not good. But the when you create something, you see it for what it is.
Sure.
Like, what went into it. And so when us as consumers, when we just see the finished product, we almost have this concept of, well, that's the truth. That's the way it has to be.
Right.
But the person that created it can see, no, I made a lot of decisions when I was making this, and I could have gone any other way. And, well, actually, I think that one decision I made was wrong. So you feel that need to continue to mess with it.
Yeah. I kind of do subscribe into the realm of leaving things be, though, a little bit. Because once you create a product, good or bad, people have a reception for it. I feel like tinkering with it usually only makes things worse. I don't think you're going to fix a movie for anybody.
No way.
And that's what I think is very much the case with these Palpatine, stories coming out right now, with Palpatine being a clone and his son being a clone. You're not going to fix the movie for everybody. Nobody's going to go look at it and go, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's better now. Just like the same thing with Rise of Skywalker. The visual dictionary is not going to fix anything for anybody because people are already going to be set in their ways after seeing this film. Now, special editions are a different story in my mind because people already loved all the Star Wars. Tinkering with it wasn't to appease any fans. It was really for George Lucas, and it was to say, George Lucas is a fan of filmmaking and technology, and so he said, I have this technology available now that I didn't back in the 70s and 80s, and so I'm going to try to make it look cooler, look better. And it worked in some instances and didn't work in others. So,
well, the times when it worked are the times when he used the technology to enhance. The times when it didn't work is when he started messing with plot and story and adding scenes.
So here's a question I have for you. And this is related to tinkering. At what point is fan feedback or consumer feedback become a detriment to the product being built? Sometimes it's good. Like, for example, Battlefront 2. I have this on the list here because Battlefront 2 had come out and it really upset a lot of fans because they did not like this game that they had spent a lot of time and money and effort into because some of the mechanics weren't great. The online system was terrible. The microtransactions were crazy, and it created a game that nobody wanted to play, and they lost a lot of money doing that. Yeah. So they had to backpedal and almost redesign a new game. Now, I personally love the game now, and I think there's a lot of great things, but they lost a lot of people in the beginning because not a lot of people came back to it after they fixed it. It still has very few players. I mean, there's a lot of them out there, but it's not the game that you would expect for a Star Wars online multiplayer game.
Yeah, and I personally have been playing since day one, and I've enjoyed it since day one, and it has changed a bit, but to me, it still feels exactly the same as day one. So
I think the biggest differences, though, are like the microtransactions and the way things came out in the game. Like the single player is the same, right? And a lot of the dynamics are the same, but they fundamentally changed the way the gameplay would be. Not the gameplay, but
because the gameplay loop is the same,
right? But the way it would work for progression and things like that. The progression system is what I'm trying to get at.
The progression system was kind of broken at the beginning. And I think fan feedback, because there's been a couple instances of fan feedback saving games. I think Battlefront 2 is a good example. Obviously, No Man's Sky is a good example of that. And then in film, the recent Sonic movie was a good example of that. I think the fan feedback is useful when it shows the people in suits sitting behind desks what the difference between like what fans want and what sell is. What am I trying to say? When it shows the people that are making decisions that aren't actually fans of the franchise, that something needs to change. I feel like with Star Wars, especially with the sequel trilogy, the fan feedback didn't help necessarily.
No, I don't think it did either.
With the video games, it did, because there was like specific things that we wanted. With Sonic, it was a very specific. We want a different look, and we want a little bit better. And then they also changed some of the personality aspects of Sonic. But with this, I feel like it was just too much, too everywhere. And like you said, it turned in from a focused feedback to just a kitchen sink list of things that needed to be included.
And I think that might have been one of the biggest issues with the sequel trilogy in general, is that they listened too much to all the complaining, because we sure did a lot of complaining back in the 2000s about what we thought about the prequels and Star Wars in general. And I think rather than looking at the saga and thinking, okay, what makes the most sense story-wise, what's best for the characters, what is going to be the most intriguing, they looked at it and said, okay, what do we need to avoid, and what do we need to give them to get people back on board?
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, avoid midi-chlorians, which is fine. I'm fine that they don't really talk about them.
Yeah.
And they've kind of expanded on them a little bit in some of the canon, where it's like, well, maybe the Jedi didn't have a full understanding of the Force, which is great. Because I actually like them talking about the Jedi as failures almost, because they messed things up pretty bad in the prequels. But then they said, okay, well, what did people like? Well, they like X-Wings. They like Death Stars. They like, and so they're like, okay, well, let's pepper all that in. And it didn't make a whole lot of sense for the in-canon story. And I think that's what they should have focused on, and not focused on, what is going to appease the most people.
They should have had I've said this before, but they should have had a plan going in for a story that they wanted to tell. It didn't feel like they went into these films with a story that they needed to get out.
Well, even if you don't go in with a plan, because I've said this before as well, the original trilogies had a very loose plan, you know, and they kind of expanded and thought, oh, this could be cool, oh, this could be cool, this could be cool. And I think you can still do that as long as you, A, keep your consistency and your continuity, and you tell what's going to be the best for the character, no matter what. No matter what you think the fans are going to think.
Yep.
What was best for Kelly Marie Tran character? Not staying at home and doing homework on this for the Star Destroyers.
Well, and with Episode 4, George Lucas had a story he wanted to get out there. He wasn't sure. He was almost sure that he was not going to get another chance at this story, so he told the story he wanted to tell. With Episode 7, it didn't feel that same way. It didn't feel like anyone from the story group or Abrams had a story they wanted to get out. It was like a kickoff point without a goal.
Yeah. In Episode 7, I will agree with you, almost feels more like a reboot than it does feel like a sequel.
Yeah, and we know how reboots go over.
Yeah, really well. Okay, the last thing I kind of want to talk about as far as tinkering goes is just all the reshoots that we're getting. And it's, these are pre-productions, so I wouldn't necessarily put them in the realm of tinkering, like we were talking about before with the finished product. But I just wanted to include this because, again, I think it also comes down to feedback and them not letting, in my opinion, they're not letting the filmmakers make their full choices. I feel like the one filmmaker that was led to do whatever he wanted was Rian Johnson. And personally, that was my favorite film that had come out of the sequel trilogy or these Disney era Star Wars. But you hear the stories about like Lord and Miller, right? Where they were fired from Solo and then Ron Howard was brought on.
Oh, right.
They had to reshoot pretty much like, I think it was like a third of the movie or something for Rogue One. So it's just kind of now become a tradition almost in the new era of Star Wars is we have to kind of do the movie from what we originally had planned.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think you're right. And that kind of enhances my thought of that they don't go into these with like a story that they want to tell. And I think that's where we've kind of lost our way. Even though these are like tinkering with the story before it happens, which should happen.
Sure, and that's just part of the writing process.
Yeah.
But it seems to be happening not during the writing process, but during the production process, which costs a lot of money.
Yeah, and they have it. So if they have it, they're gonna spend the time reshooting, pulling people back in, rebuilding sets, or whatever they have to do.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much going to be it for our main topic today. We had a decent discussion about tinkering in Star Wars. I think what's going to happen is going to happen, and it's Star Wars, and I'm going to soak it in either way. So.
Yep.
I did want to take a little bit of time talking about the new episode of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. So
I have many thoughts.
You have many thoughts. That's awesome. So we're going to go into Clone Wars Episode 7 review on the wings of Kirdax.
Kirdax.
As I think how you would say that. Looks like you got a couple notes here, so let's start with your thoughts and opinions on. Well, actually, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on this arc because you hadn't seen the other episodes in other.
I watched all of them this morning.
All of them this morning. Perfect.
So they're fresh in my mind.
Let's hear it. Let's have you lay into them.
Episode 1 was... I started watching it and I fell asleep. Both my wife and I fell asleep while watching episode 1. It's like, 24 minutes long?
Yeah.
And I fell asleep.
It's a lot of pew-pew, so it's yeah.
Because... And I was a little bit upset, or not upset, disappointed with it because we start out with Rex saying, I think Echo's alive. And then there's a lot of pew, pew, pew. And then you find out, oh, Echo's alive.
Yeah.
You said that in the first 2 minutes of the episode. You spent 20 minutes shooting robots. And now you just all we got at the end of it was a confirmation that Echo's alive and an introduction to the Bad Batch and how the dynamics between Rex and the Bad Batch.
So I feel like there would have been a little bit more subtlety if he would have just said something like along the lines is the only people who know these battle plans are me, maybe one other person and Echo. And Echo's dead. Just to like remind the audience, about it. And then to say it subtly. And then when he comes back, you're like, oh, Echo, he planted that earlier. That's a good payoff.
So instead of him just coming outright, I think Echo's alive.
Right.
Just him saying it was only me and Echo that knew these or
right.
whatever.
Just brought it up and him being like, but Echo's dead, And
right.
so it's like
Rex,
I'm the only one who would know these battle plans.
That would have been cool if Rex had like this conviction that Echo was dead.
Right.
And then he would have been shocked as much as we would. And
Exactly.
we would have been shocked along with him. Yeah.
However, I do see, this is a children's show.
Yes.
Which mostly adults will watch.
It felt that way.
and it always has. So I can see the reason why they would say, oh, is Echo alive? And then it's like, Echo's alive because the kids have a easier time following than you would with something more subtle. But I feel like you couldn't just have Echo be alive at the end because me personally, I'd have been like, who was Echo again?
Right.
Like, what? Did Echo die? Like, what? Why is that?
Yeah.
Because the planting of that would have been in seasons prior. So I do think they needed a little bit of a plant in the beginning of the episode, but it could have been done a lot more subtle.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue on with your assessment.
No, and then since I watched them all straight in a row, I don't remember what happened just in episode 2.
Episode 2 was when they rescued Echo. So,
then what happened in episode 3?
I
thought that's when they rescued Echo.
3. So episode 2 ends with them discovering Echo.
Oh, okay.
And then, or episode 2 does, and then episode 3 ends with them getting away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I can distinguish them in my brain.
Yeah. The second one has you open up back on the base with Anakin talking to Padme.
Right.
Yeah. What did you think about that scene with the?
That was interesting. I want to hear your opinions as well, but it was interesting to see how hard he's hiding Padme, how little he listens to Obi-Wan. Because Obi-Wan's like, you're not going to do that. And he's like, yes, I am. And then there's no more discussion. So that was interesting. And then the fact that Obi-Wan just knows openly that...
Well, and that's something a lot of people were talking about, how interesting that Obi-Wan, was like, say hi to Padme for me, you know? And he knows, which, to me, it wasn't that big of a reveal. I kind of like that because in episode 3, Obi-Wan is talking to Padme and she's pregnant and he can tell and he goes, Anakin's the father, isn't he?
Right.
I'm so sorry. He knew all along, but he's not going to out his best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought that would cause more conflict with Anakin if he reported him to the Jedi Council. But B, I don't think he wanted to intervene. I think he kind of just pushed it into the back of his mind, he knew all along, but he chose not to get involved, which might be something to explore in the Kenobi series that he could dwell on. Maybe that could be some of his regret and some of his trauma, is that he thought maybe if I would have stepped in and intervened, or maybe if I would have allowed him to confide in me, none of this would have ever happened.
I just had a little headcanon thought. He's in contact with Qui-Gon Jinn, and
on Tatooine, you mean?
Oh, is that when they first speak?
So
I was under the assumption that Qui-Gon Jinn is communicating with Obi-Wan since his death.
No. So
okay.
Obi-Wan doesn't learn to communicate with Qui-Gon until after Revenge of the Sith.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yoda says when they're in that ship,
right.
and I think it's in the Tantive, he says, homework I have for you, or training I have for you, go learn from Qui-Gon. And he kind of goes, Qui-Gon? Like, I can communicate with Qui-Gon? So, yeah, I don't think during the Clone Wars there was any communication.
Because it felt like, because Qui-Gon Jinn is like, let the Force be the Force.
Right.
And he was the only clear-eyed Jedi at the time of the Council. All the other Jedi Council kind of saw the Force as something to be controlled and manipulated, and they should be involved.
Right.
Qui-Gon Jinn saw it differently, and Obi-Wan felt like he had like the fun, artsy teacher, but he turned into like the rule follower.
Yeah.
And so this episode, I kind of felt like he was maybe letting the Qui-Gon side come out. Like he saw how he was led by Qui-Gon, and so maybe he should lead Anakin the same way. Let him follow his passions and not try and restrain him so much.
Well, there's definitely a maturity difference between episode 2 and episode 3, right?
Yeah.
So you see Anakin and Obi-Wan kind of butt heads a lot in episode 2, and it's almost like a brotherly dynamic where one of them is trying to be the father and the other one's like, no, I don't respect you.
Right.
And then later there's it's almost like when you grow up, your relationship with your dad as a teenager is much different than your relationship with your dad as an adult. And that's how I saw the difference between episode 2 and episode 3.
Yeah.
And so I like that you see progression that way in the Clone Wars. Is Obi-Wan seems more mature because Obi-Wan seems much more mature and wise in episode 3 than he did in episode 2.
Yeah, that's very true.
So then they go on this mission to get him. There's a lot of droid fighting again.
I liked episode 3 the most. But yeah, episode 2, there's a lot more droid fighting.
Nothing all that compelling.
Introduction to the Poldex, or whatever they're called. Poltex?
Oh,
the really tall native people.
I liked their design.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot, and I liked their language. I thought that was really cool, and I liked their flying...
bat
thingies, yeah. They were kind of cool.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of more standard fun Clone Wars stuff. And then they get Echo. Did you have any thoughts or feelings on the end of that episode when they pull Echo from the chamber?
Yeah. Well, first off, I really like the Techno Union. They're probably one of my favorite factions of the Star Wars because you get the cool like steampunk feeling of it.
Yeah, their design is awesome.
And one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time is Metropolis, which was filmed in like 1918. And it's got that.
Okay, I've got something to show you. I might have brought this up before. I have a really good artist friend, and I am blanking on his name. My goodness, I'm looking for his business card right now. But he has drawn a awesome poster of Metropolis, but with C-3PO. Instead of like automaton.
Because C-3PO was inspired by the robot in Metropolis.
So I'll have to show you that poster when I find it afterwards.
Poster.
It's pretty cool. Sorry, continue on
because what's the Art Deco? Because there's a lot of Art Deco elements to the Techno Union's headquarters there, especially that like experiment chamber. So I really love Art Deco. I don't love steampunk, but I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I really love that.
I like the design in that building too, and like the tubes and stuff like in his head and stuff. I thought that was really cool.
The one thing I still, every time I see one of those Techno Union guys, I can't help but think of a tooth. Their head looks like a tooth. I'm sure everyone thinks that, but I just can't get over it.
A tooth with goggles. Yeah.
But yeah, that was cool. He looked really cold.
Yeah. And then, so the next episode, they rescue him. They escape out from the building that they're in.
Yes, but I have a quick Easter egg that I think I've discovered.
Oh, sweet.
I need to Google it, see if anyone thought the same thing. There's a little Easter egg, like a nod towards Jurassic Park in that episode, because the doors open a little bit, and because the Techno Union droids have like 4 arms, and they're really thin, and they got like those 2 blasters that turn into wings later.
Oh yeah,
up on their shoulders. They're really interesting design, but as you look at them, their main arms that don't have blasters on them are like little raptor arms.
Oh yeah,
and they have like a raptor shaped head, and so the doors open slightly, and one of the droids sticks its eye in sideways, like he looks sideways, reminiscent of the Jurassic Park scene when it's looking through the glass and like fogs up the glass, looking sideways, and then it kind of like lunges at him through it. And I'm pretty sure that was a nod toward Jurassic Park.
Probably. I didn't. I'd have to watch it again to catch that. Yeah, that was okay. The flying droids. That was kind of cool. Like,
Yeah, I really liked
first I
those.
was like, "What? That's weird." But
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, no, this is Star Wars. It's fun. It's campy.
Yep.
It's convenient.
Yeah.
They're gonna be able to fly, of course, because they're flying away on their.
Well, and they also, it kind of makes sense in that the Techno Union headquarters was like up on a Cloud City type deal, so it makes sense that they can fly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there was once they went out and Wrecker was afraid of heights as they go out in that tube.
I did like that. I like that callback to his fear of heights. And yeah, when they were on that pipe thing, that was a cool scene.
The only thing that I had to suspend my disbelief a little bit was they just like jump off. I understand Anakin can jump off and land on things because he's done that in a movie before, but then like these other guys, like Rex, can just jump off and land on a giant bat.
And the bat will be fine and not try to like buck you off or flip around and try to kill you.
Well, like, there's that part of it, but then there's also, I'm just putting myself in that situation. Even if I was like an elite soldier,
it'd be so hard to
just
like
jump off and like I'm just watching myself like woof, like just miss every single bat and just fall to my death.
To like time it perfectly to figure out how to jump. But, that's action films for you.
Right.
That's how it goes.
So I suspended my disbelief there. But then once they got to the little native camp, I think there's another nod to one of my other favorite films, which is War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
And it just in the design of the big droid with like the 3-pronged face and the 3 legs, the tripods.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I almost forgot about that scene. Yeah.
And then also the sound that they make, because in War of the Worlds, it's a very laser beam type deal.
Sure.
And this one didn't sound like the normal Star Wars blaster.
Yeah.
It sounded a little bit more soundy, and so it to me it was reminiscent of War of the Worlds.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So those are my 2 Easter eggs.
All right, you've got a note here. It says "Echo unwitting spy?" ?
Yes.
I want to hear your thought on that.
2 things. A little bit of maybe some subtle foreshadowing where the Techno Union Cam Tabor, whatever. I don't know his first name.
Tamborzin or something like that.
I'm pretty sure it's Tambor. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh,
that guy.
Is Tambor's last name?
Yeah, Tambor is his last name. I don't know what his first name is.
Yeah.
The Tambor guy.
I'm gonna look it up. How about that?
Tooth Tambor. Toothhead Tambor. He said something about one of his
Is it Watt Tambor?
Watt Tambor. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Watt Tambor. He's talking to his little second in command, and they ask, well, should we let the Separatists know? Should we let Dooku know? And he says, not until we found a way to like not lose our profit margin.
Yeah.
And so he's got like a plan. So I don't think we've seen the last of him. And then at the very end, we have that shot of Echo just kind of standing there. And he's like, yeah, just like old times. So I'm thinking that he's got Techno Union stuff in his brain.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they're done with him.
So you think they're going to use him still to spy, but he doesn't know it.
Right.
So he's kind of a sleeper cell in that way.
Yeah, that's my theory.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, and also they seem to like, he had like a weird arm, like
yeah, he had a little hook arm
or like hook thing. So
and he had some Darth Maul legs.
Yeah, I wonder if he's enhanced in any way, like what they've done to him.
Do you remember how he died?
I don't.
Okay.
It was an explosion, I think.
Because it looks very much like his legs were chopped off and his arm was chopped off.
Yeah.
And then they put those back on, even though they didn't technically need to put those onto him because he was just in a tank.
Right. If he was just hanging there. So that's why I'm curious about what your little theory here, because what would be the point of constructing him back together?
I think the point is that they needed him to walk away, so they gave it like.
Oh yeah,
the
for
story
sure.
writers needed him to walk away.
But well, at the same time though, I mean, you could have just had him intact, like maybe just like missing an arm and like, but he had his legs.
That's true.
Something. But
yeah, I think he's a sleeper cell. The way that he looked at kind of off into the middle distance and said, "Yeah, just like old times."
Yeah.
It just gave me a sense of he's not done.
Here's the only thing I would combat against that.
Well, you're wrong.
Yeah, is there's not much left of Star Wars Clone Wars.
How many episodes will there be?
So I think it's 12 episodes. Yeah, I think it's 4 arcs. There's 4 3-episode arcs.
Oh,
So we still have to talk about Ahsoka because we haven't even seen Ahsoka yet.
that's the main.
So,
should be the main focus.
Should be the main focus. So we've got the Ahsoka storyline, and we've got the Siege of Mandalore, which is going to blend in with Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And we are going to see, we're going to see Bo-Katan and Darth Maul again. So I'm curious if there's really much room to play more in with Echo.
Well, I think that maybe. I don't think there'll be a whole episode dedicated to him anymore.
Yeah.
I think he might just have something to do with one of the other arcs.
Yeah, no, that's very possible. And that would be kind of cool, too. Because I want to see it get closer and closer to episode 3 and, like, maybe almost kind of like they did with Fives, where it's like almost reveals the conspiracy, but doesn't quite get to the Jedi. And so they end up, all getting killed in Order 66.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited for the future of the rest of the episodes. I'm really hoping that they bring something with the Darksaber in. Oh, I guess that doesn't matter. For some reason I was thinking they could somehow tie it in with the Mandalorian, but these are too far apart as far as time goes.
We don't know where the Darksaber,
because we've seen it after this.
Yeah, we don't know how it gets from where it was to where it is in Rebels when we first see it. So they might explain something there. But yeah, they're not going to tie it into to Mandalorian. But I'm almost, this might sound bad, but I'm kind of glad this arc is over.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoyed it, but it's like, okay, I'm ready to get into Ahsoka. I'm ready to get into the Mandalorians. Like, I want to see the bread and butter, in my opinion, of Star Wars or of Clone Wars. I like the clone stuff, but yeah, this seemed. It was a good arc, but I feel like if I'm limited to 12 episodes, I would have left out these 3.
I would have left out the first one. I really enjoyed 2 and 3, especially 3. But maybe that was just coming off of episode 1.
Yeah.
It was kind of a slow start.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's our show for the day. Again, we don't really have any listener questions because nobody's ever tweeted us or asked us any questions. So if you're out there, if you listen, the 5 people who might be, please, if you have any questions, let us know. Or if you have any feedback, or if you just hate everything we're saying, tell us that too.
If you love my voice today and it doesn't sound terrible like the last 2 episodes,
yes,
you
exactly.
can let us know.
We hopefully figured out our whole mic issue. There's been some technical difficulties, but hopefully going forward it sounds smooth and
buttery.
Yeah, that's the term.
Tweet us at BTR Star Wars.
Tweet us at BTR Star Wars. Go like us on Facebook at BTR Star Wars. Comment on YouTube, Beyond the Real Pod. If you want to send us an email, you can send us an email at beyondtherealpod@gmail.com. And yeah, look out for us on Anchor, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any place you listen to podcasts, we're going to be there. So
yep, and watch out for us behind you.
Oh,
we're right behind you right now.
That too.
Turn around.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys, and may the Force be with you. I guess is you have to close it out that way.
We have to.
There's like no other way to do it in Star Wars. So.
Punch it.
Punch it.